I think the thought that went through my mind is if it didn't work with us, what makes you think that it's going to work with her?
Thank you for joining us for the Blended Kingdom Families podcast. This podcast is for blended families, the people who love them, and anyone who just wants to improve their marriage and family relationships.
BKF exists to break the cycle of divorce, equip marriages, and unite blended families with the truth of God's Word. It is our hope that today you will receive biblical guidance and practical resources that will bring unity and peace to create your thriving, healthy home. Let's jump in.
Hey guys, welcome back to the BKF podcast. We are your host, Scott, and my lovely bride, Vanessa. 10 years of marriage. And
Almost 10.
Almost 10. We're getting
Like
close.
November.
We are getting close.
9 months.
But we're excited you're here with us today. And if you haven't already, take an opportunity, like, share, comment, leave us a message, leave us your review. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
So we're launching into a season of marriage.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about marriage. But today we're going to spin it just a bit, and we're going to talk about marriage, but you ain't the bride or the groom.
That's right.
That's right. We're going to be talking about when your ex-spouse gets remarried or gets married. You don't have to be remarried, just married. And kind of the three phases of that, or maybe three different perspectives of that. And again, in blended families, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that throughout a progression with the dissolution of maybe your first marriage, usually partners find another spouse and they get remarried, and all of a sudden you have a bigger blended family. So, but there's thoughts there.
Yeah.
There's
absolutely.
feelings.
Absolutely. And we're going to dive into each of those. And so first, Scott, just tell us the three different areas that you want to talk about today.
So I would first look at it from a perspective of if you're not remarried, let's say you're in wherever your shoes are, you're the person who's not remarried, and you're the other parent to your child is getting married or remarried. So that perspective of maybe you have not gotten to that step and they got there maybe before you did.
Yeah.
The other side of it would be you are remarried, and then your ex-spouse or biological other parent is getting remarried as well. So then there's the introduction of the step parent to the equation. And the third area that we're going to examine is, what do the children think about this?
Yeah.
And what is their thoughts? So those three areas.
Yeah.
So Vanessa, we're going to turn it to you because you kind of fit the first side of this.
Sure.
When your ex-spouse got remarried, you had not been married yet.
Right.
So let's talk about, how'd you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, and just to be completely transparent and honest, I mean, I remember, there was a bit of a grieving process with that. I mean, to be honest, we had probably been divorced, I would say, a couple of years, and he remarried pretty quickly after, was in a relationship, and they got married. And at the time, my relationship with his fiance, it was good. And so, but I remember the day that he was getting married, and just from that perspective of, there was a little bit of grieving and knowing that, that for our son, his parents were never going to be back together again. And it wasn't necessarily like that I missed him or that I wanted to get married to him again. I really don't know how to explain it, but I think it was more of a grieving for Michael and how he was going to experience that, later on in life.
Yeah.
And I think anytime when you're the person in the party that maybe didn't ask for the divorce, or you weren't the one to really make that decision, that maybe there's some part of you that thinks that maybe one day you would get back together. And so I think there's a lot of people that go through that. Yeah. And so there's a bit of a grievance there. But yeah, when further down the road, I even remember when they were getting married, I remember his stepmom coming to me, and I really respected this about her, that she was like, "Hey, I am committed, and I just want to promise you that I'm going to do the best of my ability to raise Michael into, a great, young man, and really just want to work with you. I don't want to overstep my boundaries and all of those things." And I remember she came to me early on, and we had that conversation. And obviously since then, I mean, you and I have been I've been divorced from his dad for, gosh, I don't know, 14 years now. Yeah. And so, we've definitely had our hills and valleys, and our relationship, hasn't necessarily been what it once was, but I can say that, it does change the dynamic. It changes the dynamic of your co-parenting. It changes, I think, even the dynamic with your children and how you parent. I know that there were some things that, looking back now, that I did differently because there was a new woman, a stepmom, another mother in Michael's life.
Did you ever feel any kind of resentment because he got there first?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I'm just going to be honest here. I think the thought that went through my mind is, if it didn't work with us, what makes you think that it's going to work with her?
Yeah.
And, with him moving on so fast, it made me feel, like that there wasn't love, or that there wasn't, I don't know, like that he never loved me. I don't know. And I know that that's probably silly because we were married. But I think there was just a lot of things that you start questioning. You start questioning who you are. You start questioning your past. You start questioning, I would say, your identity.
Yeah.
There was a lot that I was questioning. And then of course I was asking God, like, why not me? Why haven't I found somebody yet? Why is it that I'm the one that, and I had felt like I was the one that had suffered a lot in this situation. So why am I not getting that blessing? Like, why hasn't God brought me a new husband? Like, it was just all this why. And now I can look back and see the work that God was doing in my life. And I needed that time to be single and heal. I needed those 5-6 years to really just focus on my relationship with the Lord and focus on Michael and get to a healthy spot with him in that. So
yeah, I can imagine. You're visualizing these things, and not only visualizing them, you're seeing Michael participate in them, and
Absolutely.
You're like, come on now, like, this has been really tough on me, and I'm watching my ex-spouse become immensely happier in this process, and watching now and sharing the mother responsibilities, and I know there are people listening, they're like, dude, that is my situation.
Yes.
I am in here, and I am in the dogfight of being a single parent, and now my ex-spouse is living the dream that I once had.
Exactly.
And I've heard this quote or quote, or more of a statement is it's funny how, they don't do the things that they're supposed to do with you so they can go do the things that they were supposed to do with you with somebody else.
Sure.
And so it's frustrating.
Absolutely.
It's a frustrating process. And I love what you said about waiting on God's timing, because we've talked about this a lot, and it's very biblical in the fact that God does have a plan, and it's not on your timing.
Yeah.
It's not. It is nowhere close to. You don't really fully understand God's plan, and He'll reveal that to you at a certain point. But it's frustrating to wait sometimes.
Sure, and I'm sure that there's some people who are watching this that maybe their spouse left them, and they are now married to the person that they cheated on them with, and that can be extremely difficult. And so I know that this can be spun in so many different. In so many different ways. But I think being on the other side of it now, I didn't want to get married again. Like, I had literally vowed, and we talk about this in our book, in Blended and Redeemed, the inner vow that I made, like, I am never going to get married again. I'm never going to allow a man to treat me like that again. I don't need a man to take care of me and my son. All of these inner vows. And I can look back now and just see where the enemy really just wanted to just have a stronghold and just keep me in bondage in that area of life. I didn't think that men were trustworthy. I didn't think that I was worthy of love. I didn't think that that I would ever find anybody who would want to, love Michael and I, the both of us.
Yeah.
And so there was just a lot of work, again, like I said earlier, that God had to do within me. And then just opening my eyes, like giving me the spiritual eyes to see, like, his just goodness and faithfulness throughout all of that, and where he was taking us, and then getting on the path of praying for my ex-spouse, and praying for his spouse, and then praying for a future spouse, which the Lord brought me you. And so, I don't know, it's been a really neat journey to look back upon and just see his hand in all of it.
Well, and I think the important thing is that you didn't run from that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we can get into that scenario where we're like, my timing needs to take over, and I'm going to start forcing the issue of finding myself a proper spouse, or maybe a proper spouse for now.
Yeah.
Somebody who's going to fulfill the need that I have right now and fulfill the hurt and the pain that I have right now and make that better. I love that you were patient through that. And I remember that, even when we met, that was one of the things that I kind of looked at and said, wow, she's been single for so many years. I know she's just waiting for me. No, that's not what I said. That's not what I thought. I really thought that, hey, you had gone through a process, and I watched, and you told me a lot about that healing process. So I just think that if you're in that situation and you've kind of related to this first aspect of what we're talking about, just know that God's timing is perfect. You are not broken. You are not damaged. You may not be getting remarried the way your ex-spouse or other biological parent is getting remarried, but that doesn't mean that it's a hit on you.
Yeah. And I know everyone's relationships are different with their ex-spouse, but, you guys, if you can celebrate with them, celebrate with them.
Sure.
I remember meeting Michael's stepmom for the first time, and it really took me by surprise. It was, Michael had a baseball game, and she showed up and introduced, and I was like, okay, but I remember messaging his dad after, and I was like, hey, or he had messaged me and had said, thank you for being so kind to her. And I was like, I knew that this day was going to come at some point. And, I just hope that she loves Michael and loves you, to the best of her ability. And, and again, whenever you can just start blessing your ex-spouse and start praying for them, it really does change you, and it really changes your perspective of them. And I want to read a verse here in Colossians, and it says, "Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another. And if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you. So you also must forgive." And I love that, and this is in Colossians 3:12. And in here, it's talking about like how God's image shows through our kindness, but shines through your mercy. And so I think when you can get to a point with your ex-spouse, and they are getting remarried, and you see all these blessings and all these amazing things happening, just your kindness and the joy that you can share with them in that. Like, it's not only going to, it's going to bless your children immensely, but there's a part of that too that will bless you.
No, I agree 100%. The second phase of this is your ex-spouse or other biological parent. And I would say in 95% of the cases, it's ex-spouse. But either way, maybe you're already remarried, and now it's time for them to get remarried. So really, it's the reverse of this.
Sure,
it's the reversing of shoes here. And now you're thinking in terms of, as you're looking across and you're seeing what's happening, you're looking at it as the introduction of a new parent. And also, in some ways, you're seeing them move on as well.
Sure.
Now, I know that's not a situation you and I have faced personally, but we've definitely talked to a lot of couples who have been in that scenario.
Yeah.
Let's go from your side, from a biological parent introducing in a step parent.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
I can only speak from experience. So, I remember when you and I you proposed, and I remember it wasn't too long after, I had contacted Michael's dad, and I was like, hey, Scott and I got engaged, and we're going to be, at this time we were living in Abilene, and we were going to be moving to the Metroplex, and just was like, hey, like, this happened, we're going to be moving. And, his dad congratulated me. But it did change things, because whenever now, he's been married for years now. And now all of a sudden there's a man in Michael's life who's going to be a stepdad. There was definitely a switch in his tone, and I would say in his urgency to be more involved with Michael. And not saying that he wasn't, or was an absent father, because his father tried to be involved with him as much as he could, living, hundreds of miles away from each other. But there was an urgency. Once we moved to the Metroplex area, he and his wife then moved to the Metroplex area from where they were living. And so, it did change the dynamic of our co-parenting relationship dramatically. But I remember also too, you as the new step parent having a conversation with him of, hey, like, this is my role. This is what I want to do, much like his stepmom did with me.
Yeah.
And so and two, I think it's different when it's man to man and woman to woman. There's definitely a different dynamic there.
Yeah.
But in our experience, it went really well.
No, I think that, again, and, everybody's different in those situations.
Sure.
Obviously with us, there was a very strong preparation of, how are we going to handle this? And I think same thing from their side, but we know a lot of couples they don't have that. They don't have that kind of relationship, or maybe even, in some cases, the maturity to have those conversations, or they feel confident enough to have those conversations. Yeah. So your other spouse is getting married. You're seeing, this happen. You're under the impression that, hey, there's another, mom figure, or hey, there's another father figure coming into play. A lot of anxiety pops up. And I'll tell you the one that I think of the most is there's a fear that because there's another parent and now there's a more unified front, that those two could gang up and say negative things about me.
Sure.
That now that there's a story there, and that story is shared, and they're going to have influence of my child, and how's my child going to react? Because again, as co-parents, that's one of the things that we're most predominantly focused on is how's the child reacting to this?
Right.
And are they protecting, or unfortunately, am I losing? Are they winning? What's going on? So the step parent introduction is extremely anxiety provoking.
Well, and I think it opens opportunity for the other parent to be critical, you know, and I remember when we first started dating, I remember there were little remarks that were given to me about our relationship and you. And I think, given our situation, my ex-spouse and his new spouse had been married quite a while.
Yeah.
So they were used to this them dynamic and just Vanessa dynamic. And then all of a sudden when there's, a new step parent or a new man in the picture, so to speak, it can kind of ruffle feathers, and it may bring out emotions that they didn't know that was there. And so I remember us having some conversations and I remember you boldly stepping in because just because of the way I was being spoken to, and you were like, hey, this isn't going to happen anymore. And so I remember we kind of had to cross some roads there at the beginning, but once we did decide to get married and go down that route, it was like, okay, it's a done deal. This is Michael's new step parent, and how are we all four going to co-parent, to the best of our ability? And
I think it takes a lot of intentionality.
Sure.
And it takes swallowing of pride.
Yeah.
Both men and women have pride, by the way. It's not just men.
Yes.
But I think the introduction is so critical and can be very intentional.
Yeah.
Because again, you have to understand that there's a fear that is surrounded there. There is a fear that comes over that situation that says, I don't know what this new person's going to bring, but I'm most concerned about my child or children, and that induces a fear of what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is be bold in reaching out for a conversation to say, hey, listen, I understand this may be surprising to you.
Yeah.
It may be maybe a situation where we don't know each other very well, and all of a sudden we're going to be co-parenting together, because it's not really what you do. You're like, hey, you don't bring my boyfriend around or my girlfriend around the other parents. It's not really a normal thing. So most of the time they're getting introduced at the engagement or already married level.
Sure.
So just reaching out, having a conversation, be like, hey, listen, I just want to, as a step parent, I just want to co-parent with you.
Yeah.
I'm not judging, but anything that's happened in the past, I'm looking solely at our future and how can we work together? That alone quashes so much.
Well, and I would say to that too, like, don't let fear be the driver. Like, if you're looking at the spiritual side of it, like, don't let fear drive conversations. Don't let fear drive your emotions, because it can be a very emotional process. Getting married and you're like, okay, now there's this new person introduced into my son or daughter's life. And so, understanding that fear comes from the enemy, and that God and the Holy Spirit, that is our peace. Peace is who he is. And so, just really remembering to let that reign and rule in our hearts versus letting the enemy creep in with that fear.
Yeah. And don't forget, children have emotions and thoughts too.
Yeah.
And depending upon the age of the child, we probably see this in probably 3 phases: younger, maybe like up to 8, 9 years old, 10 to 18, and maybe adult children. They look at this and they have different feelings as well.
Yeah.
They can be excited.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, I think in a dating relationship leading up to marriage, that's generally been a time of fun.
Yeah.
Especially for kids. They don't see a lot of the maybe the discipline side of experiencing their parents' dating relationships, as they get introduced. So it's fun. So the child could be really excited, and you're going to have to be either matching that excitement with them.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be maybe getting the snide comments and kind of raining on their parade.
Yeah.
But either way, they're going to experience this. And it can have, I wouldn't say traumatic, because I think that's a big word. I think it's going to have some type of effect. Whatever your reaction is going to affect them.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, talking about it from a child's perspective, and I remember when my mom got married to my stepdad, and all of a sudden I had this father figure for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
Or the third time in my life, because my mom got married. My mom has been married 3 times, she and my stepdad. But I remember all of a sudden I have this dad, and I have a sibling too. My stepsister. And as a child, it's like you're learning how to cope with that. And yes, the idea of, hey, my mom and my biological father are never, ever going to get back together again. And just the grief that can come with that. But also now I'm taking direction from this man that, I've only known for 3 months. My mom and dad were only married 3 months. They're going on 30 years. I mean, that's amazing. But had only known him 3 months, didn't know my stepsister that well. There's an 8-year difference between she and I. And so there's just all of these emotions and these things that you're going through. And it can be difficult for a child to navigate. But, I think one of the best things that my mom did in that, in their circumstance, I mean, from the beginning, it was like, my marriage comes first. And that's something that we talk about all the time. But also being sensitive to where I was. And I remember I was in counseling. We did family counseling together, which I think is one of the best things you can do as a blended family, and helping you maybe navigate the blend in the beginning. A lot of people do that. We see a lot of blended families who are beginning to blend, or they're about to get married. They're in that engagement process, some even in the dating process, and just really utilizing an outside resource that can help you as you're going through that process. Yeah.
Yeah. All of these scenarios they're challenging, but they're real life.
Yeah.
Guys, I mean, one of the things that we want to be, committed to here is talking about real life issues. And we know that these are things that, may not be talked about every day, but they are things that you experience as a blended family.
Sure.
Sure. People do get remarried, and whether you're first or second, I don't know, but
there's feelings there. There's real feelings there, and
kids experience these things too.
Absolutely.
So I love that you brought up counseling. We are obviously huge proponents of counseling. Don't be scared of it. Don't be fearful of the experience. Find yourself a good Christian counselor. They're great. No matter where you are in this situation, just find one and go and be committed to that process.
Yeah, and I just to close this out, you guys, I just want to say, if you're the person that your ex-spouse is getting, you've been married and now they're getting married, or it's the opposite, like you haven't been married or you haven't gotten married yet and they've been married for a while. You guys, we know that this comes with a lot of emotions. It comes with a lot of feelings. It can bring up a lot of things from the past. But our encouragement is, just stay anchored in the Lord. Continue to be in His presence, continue to read your Bible, continue to pray, and continue to love on those children as they're experiencing this along with you. We know that can be heavy and it can be a lot.
Yeah. So here comes the other bride. It's a tough one. But thank you guys so much for being here. Hope this has encouraged you. We hope that this has touched an area of your life that you can start pouring into with prayer and with people and with counseling.
Yeah.
You guys take care. Have a great, great day.
Be blessed in all that you do.
Hey guys, so glad you were here with us today, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
And you can find more resources from Blended Kingdom Families at blendedkingdomfamilies.com. Join us again next time as we hang out with more amazing podcast guests. And remember, nothing will be impossible with God.